let's start off with a very, very simple question. Would you accept 16 million for Issa Diop? That's it. Answers on a postcard. That's not the end of the video. Stick around, by the way. Answers on a postcard. So I actually stick them in the comments underneath. Would you accept 16 million? The reason I've plucked 16 million is I've not plucked it from thin air. That's what it's rumoured that AC Milan want to pay for Issa Diop. Now, I think we've got to move away from the days of Jose Mourinho calling him a beast and Manchester United wanted to sign him for 60 million. Those days are gone. I think we can all accept that. I think that there's been some depreciation in the transfer market for all the reasons that we've discussed numerous times before. No money through the turnstiles, global recession, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. I would expect a player's value to be diminished slightly. However, it's not been as bad as I thought. I use the example of Buendia going from Norwich City to Aston Villa for £40 million. It's a championship player. I don't know if that's the record or not. I'm not sure. I don't know if Ollie Watkins was for 28 million before or whatever, but it feels like it is the record from a championship club. And I know technically Norwich are promoted, so I guess it's a deal between two Premier League clubs. But you get what I mean. Maybe Aston Villa paid a bit more because they have to entice him, but the value of the championship players be going up and up. This would suggest that the trend continues. My point being that whilst players' values have dipped a bit, not significantly. Now, I understand Issa Diop's value, going from 60 million to 16, is not totally reflective. He was never worth 60 million. And I think we don't blame the depreciation in value all on coronavirus and COVID football and lack of fans. Form plays some part. I would suggest that Issa Diop's stature and standing in the game as a whole, and certainly at West Ham, is less than it was when he had his first sort of barnstorming season. You've got to remember, this was a guy in his teenage years. I think possibly we signed him at 19. If not, he was only 20. We signed him from Toulouse. He was one of the most promising centre-half prospects in Europe. And he captained Toulouse at 19. So not only are you getting a player with excellent ability at that point, you're getting somebody who already has experience. This is not like signing a 19-year-old who has played a handful of games and had a few substitute appearances for a lower league side. None of this guy was playing in the French league. I don't know how many, but I think he'd had between 50 and 100 appearances. So this is already a relatively experienced player. But you'd suggest that his stock has fallen somewhat. So because of that, I wouldn't expect it to be 50, 60 million, but 16 to me, I asked you the question at the start, 16 to me seems a little bit low. Let me just try and give you my reasoning. I think when you're looking at some of the players that we are linked with, and we'll use Tarkowski as an example, it was 30 million. Yes, I know that's last season, and I am aware also that apparently we're now not interested. I don't know who to believe. I don't know what to believe on that one. I would hope we're not, for all the reasons that I've spoken about in previous videos. The age profile ain't quite right for what we want to do. But let's have a look at Fofana at Leicester. We were after him. Possibly he was at Saint Etienne. I think he may well have been. We were in for him. Didn't want to come to us. Wanted to go to Leicester. You understand that at the time. They had a higher profile than us. They've just won the FA Cup. They probably do still have a higher profile than us. However, bearing in mind we do have European competition, bearing in mind we can direct any potential signings to what we did last season, I would suggest that maybe had Fofana not have been sold and we went on from this season, we'd probably have got him for all those reasons. However, it's still, my point is it's going to cost about 30 million for us to get a comparable player to Issa Diop. Or it'll cost us, let me rephrase that, it's going to cost us 30 million for us to get a player that we hoped Issa Diop would be. Now, I've not washed my hands of him. And when I say that, I've not given up sort of hope and expectation that Diop will become a good player. I think he can. I think what he probably needs is trust from the manager. I think given a season playing under David Moyes with his coaching staff, with Stuart Pearce's tutelage, playing alongside Angel Bonner for a full season with solid fullbacks in those positions. And I think we would start to see the player that we thought we had bought. So this is not somebody I'm willing to throw on the trash heap, so to speak. So 16 million seems a little bit low. Now, I also understand that at the moment he's not producing enough to force himself into our first team. He's not producing enough for David Moyes to want to use him in every single game. So I can understand a desire to maybe cash on him. My point is, what does 16 million actually get you? I guess it gets you. I guess it gets you what? 4 Dawsons, 5 Dawsons, 5 Dawsons, 5 Dawsons, 2 Hugels, whatever the currency may be. Well, that's good, but do we want to go out and get a load more Dawsons? I think there's only one Dawson. There's Matt Dawson, there's Michael Dawson, there's many Dawsons, but there's only one Premier League standard Dawson. And we already have him. I mean, we're not talking about Dembele's here, we're talking about Dawsons. My point being, it could be called Dawson, could be called bloody anyone, quite frankly. Realistically, the point is, do we want to replace Issa Diop with a load of journeymen who are in their 30s? Not to play Dawson's impact down. I think it's a really good signing, and I think we had to make that permanent. Absolutely. My point is, we sell Issa Diop. Issa Diop has to be replaced with a young, promising centre half. And in fact, actually, I want a bit more than promise for me, 30-odd million, because that's what it's going to cost to replace him with what we thought we'd bought with him. This is a tough one. This is a tough one. I think there's an inclination to sell him. I think there's a temptation to sell him. But what do you do? What can you do with the 16 million that's not what I just described? Maybe there's a very, very talented young player out there that you'd get for 16 million who's played 20 games, 30 games, something like that. Basically, he did well in the last season, but that's not the same. That guy is not going to really persuade David Moyes that he should be starting in the first team. So for me, I think the answer is, I don't accept 16 million for him. But I do understand it's getting borderline. I do understand that the moment you start getting above and beyond that, it becomes tempting. And look, this is just all from our point of view, from West Ham's point of view. Let's not discount what might be tempting to the player. It might be incredibly tempting for a player to sign for AC Milan. Massive club, steeped in tradition. There's a lot going on there, and I feel that there's a little bit of resurgence in the Italian game as well. I mean, well, you can even see that from their international team as well, but I didn't mean that. I thought that was happening with the league. I think Inter winning it was massive. Their own domestic league, it gets tiresome and boring when the same team wins over and over again. So I think for somebody to knock Juventus off their perch was a good thing. Got nothing against Juventus, just, sort of not again. You get a Bayern Munich situation going on in Bundesliga, and as much as they try and play up the Bundesliga, and it is a quality league, it's a really quality league, with some great players and some really decent teams there. There's actually only one great team there, so keep winning the league time after time after time, really, don't they? So I think it was good for that, but I think there's an allure to going and playing this. I think there's an allure to going and playing at AC Milan. I guess if you're thinking, well, you know what, if Inter Milan can win the title, why not AC Milan? So my question is, actually, would you sell Issa Diop for £16 million? If not, and assuming you would sell him and you have your price, what is your price? What would you sell Issa Diop for?